Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Breaking Points with Krystal and Saagar. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed we do. So we're going to start by looking at what exactly happened when Trump was kicked off of social media. How did that impact his reach and his following? We're going to look at some major drama within the ACLU, basically abandoning their sort of core mission,
Really
something
bad.
Glenn Greenwald's been talking about for a long time. Some new, really pretty stunning details there. An interview with Obama that is quite interesting for the answers that he did not give as much as the answers he did give. Some news on Jeff Bezos going to space. You and I will do our breaking points,
That's
monologues.
right.
We've got Ben Smith from the New York Times to talk about all things media. So great show planned for you. Couple things that we forgot to mention yesterday. First of all, how do you like our new desk mats?
Yeah, you like these little mats?
This is all about protecting Saagar's beautiful and brilliant
That's right.
desk. Making sure we don't get any scratches on it. Second of all, one thing we didn't mention yesterday was the normal schedule. So the normal sort of show schedule is going to be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Sometimes that's going to change. 1 week where that is going to change is actually next week. And we'll tell you, stay tuned for more on those details. Something that is very exciting, though, I think you guys will like. And we'll be posting other content to the channel throughout the week. We're going to be posting some clips from Krystal and Friends, from the realignment, so you guys can get a little cross-pollination there, some extra segments that we'll post over the weekends. And if you're a premium subscriber, we're going to be doing Ask Me Anythings every other week.
That's right.
So you can submit your questions, and we will respond to as many of those as we possibly can. But with that, Saagar, the New York Times taking a look at what exactly happened from a sort of like data metric standpoint when Trump was taken off of Twitter and Facebook.
I think this is an incredibly important story. There is something that in the last several months has really coming to light, which is that the original argument around deplatforming was deplatforming doesn't work, you're just going to empower people. Actually, we have a scarier result. Deplatforming works, and it works really well. As you saw in that graphic, on the left, you could actually see all of the different chatter that was generated by a Trump tweet, a social media post. So we're talking about organs, huge multi-million people worth of interactions that were on the left.
And Eric, put that element back up on the screen so we can see.
That's right. Let's throw that back up there because people need to understand this. You can see there on the right side of the screen the number of millions of interactions that were surrounding some of his posts. Now, here's what they found. Of the dozen written statements and all these things that he issued from January 9th until May 5th, which was the day the Facebook oversight went ahead and showed there, before the ban, the social media post with median engagement generated 272,000 likes and shares. After the ban, that dropped to 36,000 likes and shares. 11 of his 89 statements after the ban attracted as many likes as the median post before the ban, but not more. So this is really interesting because what it's showing is you can circumvent deplatforming on a case-by-case basis. 11
if you're the former president of the United States.
If you're the former president. But if, in general, about 90% of the time, you're still totally and completely screwed. And I think there's a lot of really troubling stuff here, which is that what you actually see is that posts quoting Trump's February 16 statements dramatically lower. There's a whole bunch of other interesting statistics in here. And what they show is that the 10 most popular posts judged by likes with Trump before the social media bans and then after all fell dramatically. Before the ban, Trump posts garnered 22 million likes. After the ban, 1.3 million across Twitter and Facebook. So we're talking about orders of magnitude. And this, again, is the president of the United States who had to shut down his blog, or the former president, who had to shut down his blog because it was getting such limited numbers of engagement. I think this is a really terrifying story, though, Krystal, because what it does show is, and like we said, look, it's kind of nice. You know, he's not around. The media's reporting on him slightly less, even though they try to make it happen every once in a while. But that chart and the numbers starkly show that essentially 2 or 3 companies in America can make sure whether can decide whether you have a voice or not. That's just fundamentally anti-democratic to me.
There was a lot that was really interesting about this article. First of all, if we could throw that graphic up one more time on the screen, because I think that chart is so important to look at. The world on the right, where there's like these little bubbles and he pops up now and again and then he goes away. Like, I'm not gonna lie, that world's really nice, right? It's so much calmer. There's a little more like substance you can get to. Everything's just not instantly stupid and polarized and obnoxious all the way across the board. But as you're saying, Saagar, even though on this particular instance, yeah, it's nice that he's out there a lot less, the consequences and the implications of this for everyone else are really, really significant. Because if you think Donald Trump and the right-wingers that maybe you don't like are the only ones who are going to be subject to this deplatforming, you're wrong. And we've already seen that you're wrong. And we have experience from, even at the Hill with Rising, before we put it on YouTube, no one knew it even existed.
Yeah, no one.
The fact that it was on YouTube and enabled people to see it, that's the only thing that gave it power. I saw the same thing at MSNBC. Keith Olbermann, who was like the biggest guy in cable news, he leaves, is fired, whatever happens with him at MSNBC, goes to Current, still on cable news, but no longer on MSNBC, vanishes,
gone,
disappears. So yes, it does actually work, and that's exactly what's scary. The other thing that was funny about this article, though, is even though you can see with your own eyes how dramatically attention fell off of all of his posts, and they even crunched the data for you to be able to not only see that, but know the specific numbers, they still tried to frame the whole article around but it's still working.
Yeah.
He's still getting his message
but he still has
here.
a voice. I'm like, he's the former president.
And they went out of his way to be 11 of his 89 statements got a lot of likes. It's wildly different than what it was before. So the framing of it was really funny and really interesting to me. The other thing that they dug into, though, which I also thought was kind of fascinating, is they looked at different kinds of statements that he made. So statements that he made basically attacking Democrats, those only got shared, and this is in the post-ban era, those only got shared by right-wing voices, right-wing news sites, with Fox News, right-wing personalities, et cetera, et cetera. The ones that he made attacking fellow Republicans, those would be shared by the right and by more Democratic-leaning or left-leaning outlets. And I just found this particular paragraph amusing. They say, the top shares on the right of that type of content, according to the Global Disinformation Index analysis, included Fox and Friends, a cable news show, and the right-wing publication Washington Examiner. On the left, the top sharers included the popular Facebook page Stand With Mueller and the CNN journalist Jim Acosta. So it tells you a lot about who's still obsessed with Trump, even in this era.
Yeah. They're called boomers and Jim Acosta.
Stand with Mueller.
I think the other fascinating part about this, there's a geopolitical thing that comes into this, which is actually recently Nigeria banned Twitter after President Buhari's tweet was deleted by the company. And what Twitter came out and said was that this was an attack on human rights. And this is something, obviously, look, a lot of MAGA media, they're like, Twitter, by its own admission, is violating Trump's human rights. Let's take Trump out of it, and let's look at this in the very abstract, which is that they recognize the power of their platform in a place like Nigeria, and in a place where circumventing organs of power, being able to have free discourse and all of that, is important. But then when you lay it all out so starkly, like in the New York Times story, and you just see how much his engagement has completely been dropped, this is the former president. What are they gonna, if you're an average person, you're done. There's a guy named Paul Scalise, whom I'm a big fan of. Something that he has pointed out in his newsletter, the Lindy newsletter, is Stefan Molyneux. And I'm not a big Stefan Molyneux fan or any of this thing, but from the starkness of he was getting hundreds of thousands of views on Twitter and on Facebook and stuff. Now on his private whatever, we're talking like 2,000. I mean, we're we're orders of magnitude, absolute exponents down level numbers. And I think that you put all of that together, it's a scary situation. These people have a lot of power. Trump actually talked a little bit about this yesterday on Fox. Let's take a listen to what he said.
You know, they allow dictators that say death to America. That's okay. Death to Israel. That's okay. But with me, they take me off because they are radical left crazy people, and they're destroying our country, and they don't want to hear a sane voice. That's why and it's a voice that has, and you know, I was one of the top by far on Twitter and top on, and Zuckerberg said top on Facebook. And you know, and Instagram too, and you add it all up, it's hundreds. It's like I don't know. I think close to 200 million people, they say, and they take that off.
So once again, look, like his musings and all of that aside, there is a level of truth there. The lack of consistent enforcement and of standards around stuff, first Trump got tagged. Then they were like, oh, well, we got to tag a few Chinese social media. And then people were like, wait, but then you should also probably tag like all these other world leaders. And then the world leaders themselves, like Buhari, it's like, yeah, in America, you can't just ban Twitter. Well, out there, they're like, no, you're done completely. Yeah. Russia came out, even Putin and all of these strongmen came out and they're like, if these people think you can ban my account, they're like, you have another thing coming. Angela Merkel spoke out against Trump getting banned. I think it was a catastrophic decision at the end of the day. I understand
Bernie Sanders spoke out against
Bernie
it too.
Sanders spoke because he's not an idiot. How much did Bernie raise for his campaign? $200 million?
A lot of money.
I think it was $250 million, if I remember covering it at the time. Vast majority of that came from email marketing and from Facebook and from Twitter.
Yep.
AOC, it raises the most amount of money in all of Congress. She's never dialed for $1 once in her entire life. That is the power of Facebook. Is AOC ever going to get taken off Facebook? No, she's far too identitarian. But what about the next one? What about a Nina Turner? What about the next generation of a progressive? That is somebody who is 100% reliant on the internet in order to fuel small dollar donations.
And I could easily see Ilhan or Rashida Tlaib getting taken down because they have, views on Israel that are not considered acceptable. And that is the one thing, like when I listen to Trump, on the one hand, yeah, he's got a point. Obviously, I think the censorship and like the cheering of censorship from quote unquote liberals, which should be the opposite of what an actual liberal value set would look like, I find outrageous. I find it incredibly troubling. I think this is like an essential question in terms of democracy. But also conservatives only see this when it happens to them. Yeah. So even he says this thing about like, you can say death to Israel. Israel has a program where they work directly with Facebook to identify people that they find to be problematic. There's no corresponding program for Palestinians.
Right.
And, when there's extremist views. So we covered and we talked about on Rising the number of Palestinian journalists and activists who were targeted and taken off of social media. So this is another issue that Trump has basically ruined.
Yeah.
And look,
because he's for cancel culture for people who he doesn't like. Which most right-wingers are too.
100%. This was the Mike Lindell, famously the My Pillow dude, when he starts his free speech platform and he's like, but there's not going to be any cursing or pornography or taking the Lord's name in vain. They want the cancel culture to be dictated by them. That's their beef. It's not that they actually have a principle here. Now, that doesn't let liberals off the hook for like the fact that they abandon any principles in this fight either. But he ruins all of these conversations because also everybody's Trump derangement syndrome gets triggered. And if he's saying this, we're going to be over here saying, no, we're for more censorship. We want Facebook and Twitter to have more power. We want them to ban more people. We want them to ban you for life.
This happened yesterday. Actually, I'm glad you reminded me. I want to speak out on this. Rebecca Jones, who I did a monologue about over on Rising, total charlatan, absolutely lied about her role. She was some supposed whistleblower on Ron DeSantis, all of that.
Yeah.
Okay, out of the way. Can't stand her. Did a takedown. You can go and watch that. That being said, she was suspended from Twitter yesterday. And Ron DeSantis actually put out a statement saying that this is a long overdue action. And I'm sorry, Governor, but that's not what we're all about here. Look,
well, and he's been out front.
He's been out front on deplatforming.
Wow.
Now, look, according to Twitter, she was creating bot accounts in order to like defend herself, which is extremely cringe behavior. All of that being said, yes, maybe it's a violation of the terms of service, but he put out a statement celebrating it. I don't celebrate her getting taken off social media. She had a large platform. She actually targeted me personally, talking and disparaging me, all of that. It's all good. It's all in the game. I'm a big boy. Like, I did a segment. I will have to live with her criticism of that. I'm totally fine with that. So I'm out here and I want to be absolutely 100% on the record. I'm 100% against her getting taken off of Twitter.
Yeah.
I think she should be reinstated and she should be allowed to say her, ridiculous musings as much as she wants because it's a free country. And this is the problem with the hypocrisy of it. Glenn pointed that out, which is Governor DeSantis is celebrating her being taken off of Twitter. And that's wrong. It's just totally wrong. And it just goes to show where if you're gonna champion people being taken off when you disagree with them, and then then, get really upset one of the people you agree with are taken off, then it just becomes a hellscape where everybody's driving all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah,
so I'm glad
it's just about power. It's not about any kind of principle. And that's where most of these people are acting from. The liberals are acting from that, because look, it worked. It has definitely defanged Donald Trump. It has made him less of a force to reckon with. You said, and I think that this might be true, that if he remains kicked off of Facebook, he may not run again.
I don't
that
think he
is
will.
a tremendous amount of power. But you see the same exact games being played on the right. That's a stunning example. I missed that from DeSantis, because he was also, remember, he was the one who
deplatforming
signed that law about you're not allowed to deplat in Florida. You're not allowed to deplatform any politician, and there's fines and all this stuff, trying to plant his flag in the ground for if there is a Republican primary absent Trump, or even possibly posturing to be Trump's VP, something that Trump this week didn't rule out. And now you see, not only did he not, usually what they do is they just stay silent on the examples that don't benefit them. They don't actively celebrate it. The fact that he actively, affirmatively went out and celebrated it, that's really something.